Summer is here. Do you know how much water your landscape needs? You might be surprised because less is more. Mandatory summer watering restrictions are in effect May through August, and that means no watering from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and never on Sundays. Slowly increase watering your grass from 3 to 4 days a week and only add more days if you need it. For drip irrigated plants and trees, 4 days a week is plenty. Find water-saving tips at snwa.com. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency.
No taxes on tips. That was a rallying campaign promise in the last election, and now it looks like it's on the table with the new GOP budget. But does that mean it's coming to Vegas anytime soon? And is there a catch? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we chat with Gabby Birnbaum of the Nevada Independent. She's been closely watching this legislation in Washington, D.C., and is here to deliver all the tea, gratuity included. Oh, and stick around because I'll be joined by Steve Sansonetti for a conversation about the funky new concept he and his partners are bringing to the edge of the Arts District, brought to you by Barter Beer and Mall. It's Monday, May 19th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Gabby, we heard a lot about no tax on tips from both sides during the presidential campaign. It's a pretty simple concept. So is it happening for real, and is it still simple?
Yeah, it looks like yes for the moment, with the caveat, right, that there's a lot of hoops to jump through before anything becomes law here. But where we are right now is that House Republicans have put together all the tax portions of the big mega bill that Republicans are working on with President Trump's priorities. The big beautiful bill, the BBB. And included in that is Trump's campaign promise that would exempt tips from federal income tax, with the catch being it only lasts through the end of 2028, conveniently the end of Trump's term.
Yes, of course. And then on Friday, the House Budget Panel declined to advance the first version of this big, beautiful bill. The ultra-conservatives didn't think there was enough cutting of spending. It'll be interesting to see how the GOP attempts to resurrect it this week. So what is the status of the bill in the Senate that we've talked about before on this podcast, the one that Ted Cruz introduced and Jackie Rosen and others have been bipartisaning on when it comes to taxes on tips?
Yeah, so the Ted Cruz bill there that's supported by Senator Rosen and Senator Cortez Masto, who really brought a lot of, brought that bipartisan energy that you're talking about to the proposal. That's really the basis for what made it into the big, beautiful bill. Okay. It's pretty similar to the way Ted Cruz's is structured. There's an income cap of $160,000 for being able to claim this. One big difference is Cruz's bill had a $25,000 cap on the tips that you could exempt. This one has nothing like that. So if you make $50,000 a year just in tips, all 50 of that would be tax-free under this bill. It also says highly compensated individuals can't claim it, but it leaves it up to the Treasury to define who that would be, to try to keep anyone like a CEO from shifting their income to be counted like a bonus, to be counted as a tip, to make sure that doesn't count. Leaves that to the Treasury to figure it out.
Sneaky lawyers.
Right. Yeah. Anyone, any profession that they think should not be in there. And it does clarify that only professions that are traditionally tipped should be able to claim this deduction. But again, leaves it to the Treasury to name what those professions are.
Okay, so journalists are out for right now, but who knows?
Yeah, if anybody wants to tip me, feel free.
Oh boy, be careful with that. All right, well, you did mention in your story in the Nevada Independent that the bill was going to sunset only when Trump's not president. So that wasn't specifically, it doesn't say Trump in the bill. It says 2028, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, end of 2028.
Okay, I was worried that it said, actually until Trump is not president, I wouldn't put it past him.
No, I think it does sort of imply that he's hanging it up as he is constitutionally required to do. So
okay, well, we'll see. I mean, that could have been a first pitch for a third term, or
right.
I don't know, like if he dies in office, he doesn't want J.D. Vance to get credit for it or something. Like that.
Nope, just specifies end of 2028.
Okay, well, let's go back to when President Trump first proposed this no tax on tips. There was instant criticism that it would be misused by the ultra wealthy. I think we talked a little bit about that. We've been hearing a lot from people like Representative Stephen Horsford. His videos are going a little viral. He gets a little feisty out there. He stated that this bill needed guardrails that aren't there. So how have concerns like his been addressed?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will say he did get some input on this bill. He told me that he worked with a Republican congressman from Florida to ensure that the language was in there, specifying that these highly compensated people can't claim it. I do think if it were up to Democrats, they'd rather spell out in the text what industries this applies to and who can't get it, rather than leave that up to the U.S. Treasury and rulemaking. But it's not like there's zero guardrails. I mean, they definitely, I think the legislative intent is very clear that this should only apply to people who make under a certain amount in industries where they traditionally get tips.
Got it. And there was something else that Horsford really wanted in there about wages. Did anything like that come in, or you can remember what that was?
Yeah, so Horsford, I think in response during the campaign last year to sort of the dueling proposals for no tax on tips, he's really close with the culinary union, right? And so he released his own proposal called the TIPS Act, which would both exempt tips from taxation and then also end the sub-minimum wage for tipped employees. So not in Nevada, because Nevada eliminated the sub-minimum wage, but in other states, and if you've ever been a waiter, as I have, your base pay can be, as low as, I think it's under $3 an hour, and then you get up to minimum wage or higher with tips. And so under Horsford's bill, you would have to have a minimum wage, and then tips are on top of that. Tips can't get you above the minimum wage. But that did not make it into the Republican proposal.
Got it. So what hurdles do remain from this becoming a law? How soon could it be implemented?
Yeah, so right now we've passed out of the Ways and Means Committee in the House. Each House committee is passing its own portion of the bill, and then this needs to be voted on as Trump would say, one big beautiful bill on the House floor. That's no sure thing because there's a lot of issues that various groups of Republicans have with parts that don't have to do with no tax on tips, but everything is sort of riding together in one canoe here. If it does pass out of the House, then it goes to the Senate, where the Senate can change things. So in theory, the Senate could take it out. This is, again, pretty popular. And this was explicitly a Trump campaign promise. So I think, any Republican who wants to remove it from the bill would be kind of hard pressed to defend that to President Trump, who's going to be associated with this bill and who's asking for this bill. And I will say, of Trump's campaign promises that he made related to tax, no tax on tips is significantly cheaper than no tax on overtime, which is also included in this bill, and a provision that gives a deduction to seniors, because Trump had promised no tax on Social Security. They didn't do that because it's really complicated to touch Social Security, but they did create a tax deduction for seniors. And so no tax on tips only, and this is a big number for you or I, but not such a big number in congressional spending, only costs $40 billion. And those other ones are much more expensive. So I think the odds that it gets included in the final bill are decent.
Okay, so it's kind of in competition with its cousins in these other areas, and you think that it's the most attractive of the three that you've mentioned.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's the oldest and prettiest of the taxation cousins here.
Got it. All right. Well, what are the biggest issues that critics have with the tax on tips?
I do think there is some concern among labor economists for a few different reasons. I think some labor economists are worried that, if companies know that their employees aren't paying tax on their tips, they'd probably be more incentivized to have more of their income come from tips, right, rather than from base pay. And so there could be, you could say, well, you're going to get taxed on your base pay, but not on your tips. So let's hold your base pay steady instead of giving you a raise. And hopefully you can make that up with tips. That could be part of it. It definitely, people often talk about, if they travel to Europe, oh, it's great. You don't have to tip because, the workers make a living wage and you just leave a few euros on the table or what have you. This definitely does not put us on that path. It puts us further on the path of ingraining tipping. And there is, I think, some concern that people could tip less because they'd say, well, you're not even getting taxed on this. Why am I subsidizing you as a waiter or bartender? That's a little downstream. We'll see. But I do think there is some level of concern. And also, a significant portion of people who work in the service industry don't earn enough money to pay any federal income tax. So the benefits are probably going to accrue towards people who are working in high-end properties on the Strip, waiters and bartenders there, than maybe smaller off-strip type establishments.
Yeah, I mean, tipping is a complicated calculus in our city for sure. It's very important, and we've done a number of episodes. I'd direct people to listen to our great talk we have with Brittany Bronson, who's a writer and a service worker.
Beer, Barter, and Mall is a new concept where you can shop for antiques and art while you drink beer and wine. You can buy, sell, or barter your goods, services, and treasures. I actually got to stop in and check out this place before it even opened. It was so cool. It was like craft beer bar meets antique mall. I saw this amazing vintage pendulum lamp I wanted, and this other girl bought this like brass tortoise cigarette holder. It was so cute. The space is nearly 10,000 square feet, and there's over 30 vendors in there, including antique vendors and local artists. Barter Mall was created because the rent in the arts district is so expensive right now, and it's forced the antique malls and the art dealers out of the area. So art culture and community, it's just so important to downtown Las Vegas, so Barter is trying to do their part to make sure it's a place where artists will be able to continue to thrive. They're open 5 days a week right now, but by the end of the summer, they're going to be open 7 days a week. So check out barterlv.com to learn more, or hey, just stop on by, grab a beer, and do a little bit of shopping.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Let me ask you this. You talk about economists looking at this. I've also seen that despite this being a very popular platform in places like our city, Las Vegas, where a lot of people do get tip income, there are projections that it means it's going to be an increase to the deficit. So where are Trump and company looking for cost savings to sort of offset the projection in creating a higher deficit?
Yeah. And so that's a big deal, right? And I would say no tax on tips, like I mentioned, $40 billion, a lot for you and me, not a ton for the US Treasury. The huge deficit hits are going to be from extending tax cuts that Trump first did in 2017. Mm-hmm. So this, among other policies, like you mentioned, make the deficit bigger. They have to try to find savings in other places. So right now they're looking at significant cuts to Medicaid, significant cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is SNAP or food stamps as it's commonly known, cuts to other areas of government spending. Those are some of the big ways they're looking to generate savings to account for the loss of taxation revenue for this and mostly other tax-related policies.
Well, with DOGE and other programs, I mean, Nevada's already seen a bunch of cuts. So, I mean, this is going to potentially heap it on. I'm wondering, has anyone looked at how many tipped employees also rely on Medicaid?
Yeah, I would imagine that's a big overlap population. Yeah. And so, if that might be part of the Trump agenda, you might not have to pay taxes on your tips, but you could be at a greater risk of losing your Medicaid if you have issues with the, new red tape they're going to put in around work requirements.
Yeah, I this seems to be kind of a playbook that I've seen before, being an old person, that, the deficit gets run up. There are some immediate tax savings that are very popular. And then if a new administration comes in, it's their fault that they have a huge deficit that they're dealing with.
Right. And I think part of that is, so a lot of the cuts, like the Medicaid cuts, for example, wouldn't kick in until 2027 or 2028. And like this, the no tax on tips would expire at the end of 2028. So you'd have a new president coming in who would likely be under pressure to continue the tax savings that people are experiencing that are popular, and then is all of a sudden dealing with people getting kicked off of Medicaid and SNAP and stuff like that. So the timing is pretty intentional there.
Oh, economics. So at the end of the day, Gabby, what do you think about this bill impacting Nevada? I mean, how do you think Las Vegas specifically will deal with no tax on tips if it goes through?
I mean, I think this would be a huge deal, right? I mean, I think Nevada, as a percentage of the general working population, tipped employees are higher than just about anywhere. So if you are, a waiter or a bartender or what have you in Las Vegas, and you make enough to pay federal income tax, this is something that would directly affect you. And I think, it's obvious why Trump chose to launch this promise in a campaign speech in Las Vegas. And why he kept referring to it when he would come campaign in Vegas. This is a tipped town. And so I think for Trump, this was a way for him to, having won Nevada, to sort of make sure he made good on that promise. And I think that's something that as soon as next tax year, if this passes, people in Las Vegas would see the impact.
Now, you are doing some great reporting on this. I'm wondering if you've reached out to anyone in the Culinary Union yet to see if all of a sudden there's a bunch of Trump love.
I did talk to Ted Papageorge the other day about this. I mean, he said he was glad the proposal made it in. He and others obviously wished it was permanent rather than a three-year commitment. But he said, like, all the Democrats in the delegation are saying, because this bill or this provision is attached to Medicaid cuts and food assistance cuts and everything that Democrats don't want, Culinary is not going to be upset at, the Nevada Democrats for eventually voting against this bill when they get the opportunity. And, Culinary does not support the underlying bill, even if they support this provision.
Do you think there's other parts of the country that are watching it as closely as Las Vegas, or are we kind of like the top of that heap?
I would think Las Vegas is, one of the places where this would be the most meaningful. I mean, I think some of the members who represent areas near Disney in Florida are paying close attention. A lot of tipped workers there, Hawaii. But no, I mean, I got to think Vegas. This is probably the biggest deal to us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a solace given that a lot of these tourist areas that you mentioned are suffering a decline right now just because of international travelers not coming in.
That's the other thing. Yeah. And Ted mentioned that to me too. He said, it'd be great if we don't have to get taxed on tips, but, at the same time, if
there's no one here to tip.
Right. He's worried about potential layoffs if travel continues to be down. And so I think that's more immediate to him and to maybe some of the workers in the union.
Yeah. Well, Gabby, thanks per usual for connecting all the dots and giving the bigger context. Really appreciate you. And thanks for coming on CityCast Las Vegas again.
Thanks for having me, David. Always a good time.
Hey, before you go, quick reminder that we've got a live podcast recording coming up this week on Thursday, May 22nd at the Rita Deanan Abbey Art Museum. Beautiful, beautiful space. It is free, but make sure to reserve your spot. We'll have a link to that in our show notes. It's going to be called The Lost Art of Las Vegas, art that's come and mysteriously disappeared. Should be a fun time. And listener, don't go anywhere. In just a second, we've got a segment sponsored by Barter Beer and Mall. Hey, David Figler here with Steve Sansonetti. He's the general manager of Barter Beer and Mall. Steve, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, David. I've been looking forward to speaking with you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
For folks who haven't been, what exactly is Barter Beer and Mall, and how do y'all mix shopping with sipping?
Shopping and sipping. We mix it by bringing in one unique place where you're greeted, where first when you walk in, you can see that's where the bar kicks in with beer and wine menu. And then right from the bar is a shopping experience. We've got a Doc Martin wall. And then from there, it just turns into a great experience. And then that's where we mix in with the artists and the antique dealers and people that just have great craft making skills.
I mean, you've got over 30 vendors in what is a massive space. I've been there. We did an event there. It's quite gorgeous and homey and funky. So how did all this come together, especially with, rising prices are pushing artisans and artists out of the arts district, but now you're going in there.
Exactly. Just being able to team up with the right people is where you got to start from. So this definitely is not my idea. There's honestly 5 of us that put this all together. And so we all came together, and this was supposed to just be a warehouse to store items, but get a little bit more organized. So if we had somebody to come in, they could shop it in a way. And then it turned in, hey, that's where the sipping comes along of the beer and wine. We were able to get a beer and wine license and kind of keep it simple. So we thought, hey, what if we could get, mix, people coming antiquing. We didn't even think about the artist's art quite yet, because Derek just would like to bring his stuff in and stuff like that. And then my background being in the art district, I noticed how artists and antique dealers were getting pushed out due to rate cuts and stuff like that. So when Derek gave me this opportunity, And he gave Suzanne an opportunity too, that those two didn't even know each other, but for a week. And she seen his vision. And once I seen that she seen his vision, I already seen his vision. But when I seen how Suzanne came aboard, things just all got excited.
You mentioned some names that are probably familiar to anyone who's been around the Arts District or downtown. You mentioned Derek Stonebarger. He's one of your partners. He runs Rebar, which is kind of like a smaller version of this bigger concept. You mentioned Suzanne with Mint Vintage.
Yeah, Suzanne Rosenthal.
Yeah, and so you've got these great partners there, and you've signed a long-term lease. I mean, why was that important for supporting local artists and vendors?
That's because Derek has a great vision, and Derek is honestly looking out for, and Suzanne and me, looking out for the vendor and the artists. We see every time a vendor starts to make a profit or something like that, the rent goes up or the building gets sold. So Derek, he took the risk, and Suzanne, all of us, we took the risk. The owner of the building, the way we got to do the contract, we went ahead and did a 9-year lease. So we might have some increases, but it's not going to be very much on the vendors or the artists. We're going to be able to absorb it ourselves. So we don't have to come in and, hey, great, you guys are making money. Well, guess what? We want to make money also. So the way this is structured is honestly vendors and artists looking out for them. If they're successful, of course, we're going to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, this is really like no antique mall I've ever seen because it's, from high to low. It's got thrift, it's got artisanal artists, and, like these really hardcore antique finders, the treasure hunters. And it's quite amazing. I did talk to Derek, and he said this is what he's always wanted to do, but they figured out the licensing to, get people a little tipsy. I've always been told don't shop when you're tipsy, but here I think it's actually it enhances the experience. So tell me, Steve, what can people expect if they stop by Barter Beer and Mall right now?
Well, what they can definitely expect right now is an experience. To come see Barter, it's not a 7-Eleven or something. Honestly, to come see Barter, at least take 45 minutes. And I promise you, your 45 minutes, you're going to want to take it another 45 minutes. I want the customers to come in and feel like it's a great place, not only to relax and hang out a little bit, but also to shop.
Get that ottoman or get that funky sign that you've always wanted to have. I mean, it really is a wide range of different cool stuff. It's a great concept. Love walking in, seeing a beautiful bar there, and then just going and exploring. So, Steve, thank you so much for being here. Again, check out barterlv.com to learn more. We'll have that link for you in our show notes as well, so you're just a click away. Thanks for listening. And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, please go tell a friend. You could also rate the show. When's the last time you rated a show? It should be ours. Leave us a review too and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.